screen here so we can take a look at some fun stuff today. So today we're going to be talking about this Article 2 of the Constitution. And there's a picture of the Constitution up there so you guys can see what it looks like. I work at the Hoover Presidential Library, and I'm part of the Presidential Libraries with the National Archives. The National Archives is in Washington, D.C., so if any of you guys get to go there for a fun trip, stop and see the Constitution. The same exact thing we're going to talk about today. If you're ever coming through Iowa, you can stop and see me. I'm in West Branch at the Hoover Library. So where do laws come from? You guys can shout it out. Do you know where they come from? The Constitution. So we have this great document that's part of the United States that all of our laws come from. But who wrote the Constitution? Do you guys know? This is the Founding Fathers. And this is a picture of the Founding Fathers up on the screen. And they wrote the Constitution in Philadelphia. And if you guys go to Philadelphia, you can still visit the historic site where the Constitution was written and ratified. The Constitution was mostly written by James Madison. They called him the father of the Constitution. He became the 4th president of the United States. And a fun fact, he was our shortest president. He was only 5'4". So what is the Constitution? The Constitution is broken into 3 parts, and we call those parts articles. So what did it do? It set up 3 branches of government. So the government gives us our laws to follow, right? So Article 1 establishes Congress, and Congress writes our laws. Sometimes you'll hear about the House of Representatives, or you'll hear about the Senate, and both of those houses are part of Congress. Article 2 establishes the presidency. The president enforces the laws that Congress writes. The 3rd part of the Constitution, Article 3, establishes the courts. The courts look at our laws and make sure they follow the Constitution. If they don't agree with the Constitution, then the courts throw them out. So let's take a vote. You can only vote for one. What's your favorite, birthday cake or pizza? You guys can think about your answers. You can shout them out. You can put them in the chat box for me. I see birthday cake. Birthday cake is my favorite. So just like we're voting for our favorite food, that's how we vote for our president. We get our president and vice president every 4 years through the Electoral College. So all of your moms and dads, and if you have any other family members that are over 18, we go and vote. We get to pick a president. So how long is our president in office for? 4 years. We vote every 4 years. Remember I said that? The president can only be reelected 1 time. So that means we vote, you get your president for 4 years. How many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 years. We vote again. And then if you like that president again, you can vote for him and keep him for 4 more years. But after that, he can't be president anymore. So fun fact, you see, this is one of my favorite pictures. It's Franklin Delano Roosevelt and his doggy Fala. The only president to serve for 3 terms was President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or we call him FDR. He was the president right after Hoover. He was president from 1933 until 1945. When he left office, the 22nd Amendment was passed that said presidents could only be reelected 1 time. So that means 2 4-year terms for 8 years. But if the people decide they don't like the president, then he's not reelected and he only serves 4 years. So who can be president? You guys want to know, right? You have to be at least 35 years old. That means you guys aren't ready to be president yet, but maybe your moms and dads. You have to be born in the United States, and you have to live in the United States for at least 14 years. So I have a question for you guys. Can a woman be the president? What do you guys think? You can shout it out. You can write it in the box. The answer is yes, we can definitely have a woman for president. We haven't had a woman president yet, but they can be president. What happens if the president cannot be in office anymore? Does anybody know? Who becomes the president? The vice president becomes the president. So right now we have President Donald Trump, and if he left office for any reason, then Vice President Mike Pence would become president. Does the president get paid? Do you guys think the president gets paid? Does the president make like $1 million a year? Does anybody know? Yes, the president gets paid. This is how much they get paid. So you can see in 1789, the first presidential salary was $25,000 a year. That might sound like a lot of money to you guys, but right now that's not a lot of money. And then they got raises all the time. So then you can see in 2001, the last raise was to $400,000. And then presidents can't get raises while they're in office. So if Congress says, we want to give the president a raise, it doesn't happen for this president, it would happen after the election. Herbert Hoover didn't accept a salary, and President Donald Trump doesn't accept a salary either. He donates his salary every time he gets paid. So what can the president do? He's commander-in-chief of the military. So if you guys have any family or friends who are in the military, the president is their big boss. They get to choose people to lead the departments of the executive branch and ask for assistance and advice. So fun fact, where I work, the National Archives is an executive branch agency. So the president gets to choose the head of our agency. So the last time we had a head of agency chosen, President Barack Obama selected David Ferriero to be the Archivist of the United States. The president can pardon people's crimes. So if someone commits a crime and the president decides that he was unjustly convicted, the president can overturn it. The president can make treaties with other nations, but the Senate has to agree to the treaties. He can appoint, the president can appoint important people like ambassadors and judges, but Congress must approve that. So that's why you see when the president appoints Supreme Court justices, Congress has to approve those Supreme Court justices. And the president enforces our laws. So fun fact, there have been 163 nominations to the Supreme Court. 126 were confirmed by the Senate. And this is a picture of John Jay. John Jay was the first Supreme Court justice, and he was appointed in 1789. Wow, that was a really long time ago, right? So we've had Supreme Court justices since 1789. So what else can the president do? He informs Congress about the State of the Union. Every year, the president goes into the House of Representatives and gives this big speech about the State of the Union, the State of the United States. And you guys might see this on television. It's a really big deal. But guess what? I think there's an awful lot of clapping in the State of the Union addresses. The president can also make suggestions to Congress for new laws. So Congress writes our laws, but the president can call representatives in Congress and say, hey guys, I think we need this new law. And then Congress can start working on that law. Guess what? As a citizen, you guys can write Congress and you can make suggestions for laws too. That's really cool, huh? So when you're a voter, you get to do that. You get to write your congressman and your senator and ask for laws. The president can also call special sessions of Congress if there's an emergency. So Congress has a calendar and they only meet during certain times of the year. But if there's a big national emergency, the president is the leader of our country and he goes to Congress and says, guys, I need you to come back. We need laws to help people in the country because there's this big problem happening right now. So Congress will come back to Washington, D.C., and they'll meet in a special session to pass bills and to pass laws to help our country. So do you guys think a president can be removed from office? The president can be tried or impeached by Congress for treason, bribery, or other high crimes or misdemeanors. And if he's found guilty, he can be removed from office. So impeachment starts with Congress. Congress takes a vote and decides whether or not to impeach a president. And if Congress votes yes, they want to impeach the president, then it goes to the Senate. And then the Senate can vote to remove the president. Do you guys think we've ever had a president removed from office? What do you guys think? Has anyone been removed? So some people are saying yes. So it's complicated. We've had presidents who have been impeached for different reasons, but getting thrown out of office is totally different. That hasn't happened yet. Richard Nixon resigned and left on his own, so he wasn't actually thrown out of office. So do you guys, Bill Clinton was impeached, but he wasn't thrown out of office, so that's a good comment in there. Yes, he was impeached, but not thrown out. So if you guys have questions, you can type them in there for me. This is one of my favorite pictures. This is Racing Herbie from the Washington Nationals. They have racing presidents that go out and run on the baseball field. They're so much fun. And this is outside of the Hoover Library when they had Racing Herbie. Do you guys have questions for me? I'd love to answer any questions you guys have about the presidents or about Article 2 of the Constitution. I see Go Nats in there, yeah. Oh, someone asked, why do we have a president? That's a really great question. So we've tried a lot of different experiments with government, right? And so we've found that throughout human history that if we don't have some kind of order and some kind of laws, that people can be really awful to each other and they steal and they're not nice. So the laws help keep society civil. And then the reason that we installed a president was because we needed someone to lead the country, right? But if you look, the founding fathers made Article 2 for the president because they didn't think the president was the most important job. They thought Congress was the most important job, representative of the people and writing laws. And if you guys know anything about American history, you know the reason that we had the Constitution was because of the American Revolution. The Americans were colonists, and they were colonists from England. And they didn't want to be ruled by the king anymore. So then they wrote the Constitution. Well, before that, they wrote the Declaration of Independence, but then the Constitution to install a new government. Does the Declaration of Independence have laws in it? No, it doesn't. Actually, the Declaration of Independence was the United States severing ties with England. So they said, you are not going to rule us anymore. These are the reasons why. And then people signed it to say that they were leaving the English government. So which presidents had the most pets? Can you guys guess? If you watched my last one, you know it's Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt and his kids had a huge zoo of animals, all kinds of things. Snakes and badgers and horses and all kinds of stuff. All kinds of presidents have had pets in the White House. Why does the vice president become president if something happens to the president instead of us voting for another one? That's a really great question. So the reason we get the vice president instead is because an election would take a really long time. And so if you guys look through history, JFK was assassinated. He was killed by an assassin, and then LBJ was sworn in on the airplane. If we went for a long period of time without a leader of the country, It makes things kind of unstable, and maybe someone could take advantage of us. So it's to make sure that the government continues. And if the vice president has to leave office, then we get the Speaker of the House as the next person in succession. There's a whole line of succession for who takes over the role of the president if one person goes and goes and goes. Yes, there was presidents that had alligators. Someone asked if a president could take a day off. I mean, the president's the president 365 days a year, right? But we know from looking at our presidents, one of their favorite things to do is to go golfing. Some of our presidents have liked to go fishing. Inside of the White House, there's a bowling alley and there's a movie theater. There used to be a swimming pool, which is now the press conference room is above that. So presidents have built in to relax because it's a really stressful job to be the president, right? So they can sort of take a day off, but they're always the president. If the president was out doing something and the country needed him, he would leave what he was doing right away and come back. Not like when I have a day off, nobody calls me on my day off. I just take the day off and it's okay. All right, let's see if there's any more questions here. Does the president have to live at the White House? That's a good question. So yes, the president does have to live at, well, I don't know if it's a law, but they've all lived at the White House. And the White House is really cool because it's also a public museum. So anytime any of you guys go to Washington, D.C. on vacation, you can tell your parents that you can write your congressman or your senator, and you can ask to get onto a tour of the White House, and you can walk through the White House. The president lives on the second floor, so you probably won't get to see him, but mostly all of the presidents have lived in the White House. The first president to live at the White House was John Adams, and he had 2 dogs, in case you guys were wondering. Oh, so someone asked if anyone with very little money has been elected president. It seems like it costs a lot to run a campaign. So campaigns have changed over time, but early in our history, the framers of the Constitution, people like James Madison and Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, these guys thought that people who were really wealthy would make the best lawmakers and presidents because they would be less likely to be corrupted. That means that you couldn't ask them for favors because they already had money of their own. But as time went on, the people had decided, no, we want better representation of the people. So campaigns started to change, representation started to change. So if you watch even like our most recent elections, President Barack Obama said that when he was elected, all of his credit cards were maxed out, they were completely out of money, and they were running on a shoestring. So I mean, yes, he had some influence, but yeah, it is very expensive to run a campaign. So you have to be really good at being the president, like a leader, and being someone who can raise money to run for office. Can presidents change or add things to the White House? Yes, if you guys look right now, the First Lady, Melania Trump, is adding a tennis court to the White House. There's been greenhouses on the White House that have come and gone. There was the swimming pool that was changed into a press area. So things can be added and taken away. There's no money appropriated from Congress to take care of the White House. So that's mostly funded by the White House Historical Association. They give money for things like curtains and maintenance, and the whole outside of the White House is actually a national park. So it's taken care of by the National Park Service. Oh, someone asked where President Hoover lived after he left the White House. So President Hoover lived in a lot of places and he traveled the world quite a bit. For a while, they lived in Stanford in California, and they had a mansion there that now the president of Stanford lives in. I'm sorry, Palo Alto in California. And then after that, for a while, he lived in New York City and had an office there. And if you guys come to the Hoover Library, you can visit what used to be his office, recreation of it in the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. All right, guys, I think we're going to sign off. Thank you so much for coming. This was so much fun. Keep looking for more distance learnings. We're going to keep adding sessions. We have a full schedule through May. I hope you guys have had a good time. Make sure to wash your hands and keep learning. All right, guys? Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.